I need to flatten this top, and I think I might do it with some sandpaper and my hand plane, combo of the two. But I need to make that big sanding block for it. The banding is obviously going to need some work too. Which brings me to how I should probably go ahead and cut those thin strips. What should be is I probably should resaw them on my bandsaw. I have a 14-inch grizzly, and the blade is super dull. So I should probably go ahead and switch that blade out. I'd like to show how to do that. To me, my bandsaw is not set up good at all. I was actually working on a 35mm adapter project for a film I was working on, and I was cutting a piece of PVC on it. No big deal, PVC, go through it like butter, but I forgot there was a screw going through it, and I totally screwed up the blade on there. I think I'm also going to have to prop up and put back up the my planer, as well as come up with a planer sled. So I think, well, what we'll do first is I'm going to start working on that piece of MDF, gluing up that block for the sandpaper sanding block. Okay, what I was originally thinking was to go ahead and cut this board in half, flip it over, and make a planer sled. So that a half-inch half will give me an inch. But a half-inch should suffice with raising everything up enough to trim those thin pieces. And then I was thinking I would use this 2 blocks of 3/4 inch MDF to make that big sanding block. Now the problem with that is the paper is actually wider, so I'm not really effectively using the paper. So what I'm thinking of doing is just cutting the planer sled with a 1/2 inch, put the cleats on the ends, and then just go ahead and take what's left and make it into that sanding block. I think I have an issue. Yeah. One of the problems with having my thing so close to the wall is I can't really make these really super long cuts without shifting my station, which is okay. The station's on wheels for that exact moment. It's a downfall of working in such a small shop. Now I'll just push everything back. Okay, what I'm doing is I'm taking this piece here, which is for the sanding block, and I am just roughly marking out where. Yeah, enough. Okay, and we're not. But what I can do, and this will work fine, is I can have the 2 bottom layers thicker, the top layer a little smaller. Doesn't really matter at that point. It's just giving me some height and backbone. So what I'll do is I'll mark out these, and I'll go ahead and I'll set up the table saw to do a rip cut. So that's basically it there. And glue it up, clamp it up. Will be things that will hold this down, and I can put 2 dowel handles in there, right, and kind of hold it like a plane. A lot of glue. Okay. Oh my god, I just used way too much glue. Let's move on to the planer sled. Here is the planer sled. And basically, it's just going to have some cleats. I can just go with these cutoffs. They're some maple cutoffs. So, and what that'll do is that'll keep the board from sliding off. That's all. They just go underneath. There's a limitation on how low you can go and how thin of a piece you can cut. By raising the bed up like this, I can cut smaller, plane down smaller pieces of wood. Perfect for the inlay. Okay, one of the things I'm going to do, just something simple, is this scrap piece that was originally cut off, the boards for the aprons, still has the rough bandsaw end from the mill. Now, it doesn't really matter, I mean, but I'm just going to clean it up a little with a block plane. Now I could set this up to do it on the table saw, but by the time I switch from rip to cross cut for this little piece, I could have had this piece cut. So what I need to do is I need to drill holes to screw this on. As well as I need to find screws that won't pop through the other side, because that'll bind up and bind up the pieces going through the planer. Okay. Got the one end on there. It's not super pretty, but it's there. It'll work. So I put it in. The cleat we already put on is on the other side, and I'm pulling to make sure it's tight. And I will just draw a line. And as long as we're on the other side of that line, we should be good. Now I have that line, I know not to cross it or the sled won't fit. So I'll put this to keep straight as possible. I want to give myself a little leeway, and I want to make sure that, there we go, I'm not super tight up against it. So now that it's on there, go ahead and, okay. And there you go. That drops down. Effectively, raising the bed up a ½ inch so I can cut smaller pieces. This is good. The only thing I wish I kind of did was a little wider. Now that this is set up, I think we'll go ahead and move to do some work on the bandsaw. Okay, this is my bandsaw. It works well. It could work better, but I really don't think that's the bandsaw's fault. I think that's my fault. I really need to get better at setting this up. Right now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to swap out the blade. I'm going to be replacing that blade with this blade, which is also a much more aggressive blade. It's a thicker blade, but I'll be doing some resawing, so I think it'll do nicely. Plus, it's the only other blade I have, so I'm really kind of limited in my choices there. So I'm going to go ahead and take the tension off this. I'm an idiot. I have a toolbox that holds all my tools, all my sockets. So what do? I go to close it, and I pick up the end that everything sits in, and flips it over. I have sockets out of place, sockets on the floor. I need to go take a minute. I think it's time for my break. When I start getting like this, not thinking, a couple things could happen. Damage my tools, damage the project I'm working on. An even worse thing, I could hurt myself badly. Okay. blade. Now there are certain ways to fold these up. It's very similar to reflectors I work at work. At least I thought it was. We'll deal with that later. Okay. Maybe by pulling this out, I'll figure it out. First, what I really want to do is just take a good look at all of the components. Now, the bottom wheel seems to be tracking pretty good. Front wheel, not so much. They're supposedly maybe that's what this knob does. Unlike the other blade, which was really, really dull because of the problems with it. This one is a lot sharper. Half-inch blade. So I will tension. Dave Noss is right. This should be a hand crank. Okay, so the blade is on. That took a while. I'm going to adjust the upper guides. So I have a couple adjustments here. One is the rear thrust bearing. Two is these side rollers. First thing I'm going to adjust is this back thrust bearing. It's right up against there. One of those things where I've got a micro adjuster at the back, right? And I'm just adjusting it. I'll use the tag. I'll tighten this back down. Okay, it seems to be tracking pretty good. One thing left to do, and that is place the guard back on. Okay, I think we're ready to do some resawing.